Anyway, so as a quick introduction to Abhinav, he has been working with us as a software engineer for a long time, and he's been building amazing things at Geeky Ants. His recent obsession is with 3D objects and 3D environments. And when he's not coding, he is an avid gamer like me, and he likes to play a lot of Destiny 2, Genshin Impact, and a lot of other games. So, with that, Abhinav, I think I'd just let you tell everybody more about yourself and then carry on with your talk. So, the stage is yours. All the best.
Yeah. So generally, I develop payment systems and such. So, that has kind of given me a lot of insight on what are the various issues and aspects that come out of high scaling mechanism. So one of those things, kind of gave me an introspection to, how certain components need to be done and so on. So that is why, like generally we have done HOCs and such in React, so but we never really do that in Angular. So that's why that's when I kind of clicked, like it's not that we don't do it, but it's like there are certain issues with it. But with the new changes in Angular, that has become very common. So let me just show you my screen. So let me know. So I hope you guys are able to see screen. So when we talk about HOCs, right? So HOCs are higher order components, which are, general definition is that, you pass in a component and, it provides some in a wrapper component and provides some sort of enhancement. So in Angular, we had generally not done those things for quite a while. We generally had, two ways data modeling and so on, which, kind of never really required us to, kind of do those things. But with Angular Ivy, we have kind of introduced those things. So why is Angular Ivy so important to us? So in Angular Ivy had introduced two very important aspects of compilation in Angular. One is the locality and other is the tree shaking. So tree shaking is essentially the general ability to essentially remove anything that is not required. So for example, Angular is a large framework. You are using routing, we have subscribers, you have services and so on. But in every single application, you might not necessarily be using the 100% features of the framework. So why do you need to even care about the features that you're not using? Like, why is it getting shipped to the consumer when they are not really using those features, when you're not implementing those features? So Angular, by using the tree shaking ability, essentially removes all of those unused features, essentially reducing your bundle size. And second is the locality. So Angular in the previous, before in until Angular 8, Angular used the view engine model. So in view engine, what used to happen was that we had the concept of entry components. If you had ever checked your compilation logs, so entry components are essentially your ng modules. Angular uses those entry components to actually compile all of your components within Angular. So it goes into ng modules, it checks the app.module. From app.module, it finds list of components that need to be rendered and need to be compiled. So that essentially caused a certain bit of restrictiveness in Angular, but like, what's that most people know, how, if you need to add a service, you need to go to module, you need to add it in providers and so on. But that is something that, they have reduced, with Ivy engine, there the concept of entry components has been reduced, and locality is essentially the concept where every single component is getting compiled only using itself. So it does not depend on its own other dependencies, like is that component getting then imported into some other component, so on, are not no longer looked into. They don't really care about the metadata. So they are just compiling these things. So these things have essentially added. And Ivy has also fixed a lot of CSS issues. So previously what used to happen was that there used to be a sort of a race condition kind of issue with CSS classes, where if multiple classes were targeting the same thing, there used to be times where one class would destroy the other class in pursuit of adding their own styles. But with Ivy, they have essentially also fixed those things, and they have provided a predictable way of merging these things. So with Angular, we generally have ngF, ngFor, and so on. But for HOCs, this becomes a even more important thing, because we'll be generally using the Angular templates to essentially combine these things. So that's why they have improved these sort of type checks using the full template type check for the Angular configuration, so that you can fix those things. And the most important thing to us, for our implementing a HOC is dynamic logging. So the support for ES6 dynamic import essentially provides an async await kind of feature, So essentially in a sort of a promise way where you can essentially dynamically import components at runtime. So why? So as we talked, with the locality and deprecation of these things, deprecation of entry components, this has paved way to essentially create lazy loaded components. So like generally when we do development, right, we generally are in a lazy loading state where we are only compiling only those components which we are required. But what if we can essentially add those features into a production level environment? So why would you even want to add a lazy loaded production environment? Why would you just not do AOT? So the thing about it is, you might not be using, so for example, let's say you have got a project, right, over 60, 100 plus components that, multiple smaller components and so on. That would lead to eventually a point where you have a lot of things, you're running and so on. And that can eventually, consume a lot of memory. And also it can also create extremely heavy components, like for example, I had once a component which essentially had over 80 imports. Why would you want an 80 import? But that just ends up happening, like it's a home page, there are multiple graphs, there are multiple projects and so on. So it kind of adds up. So how would you fix those things? So with lazy loading, we can essentially dynamically check which components need to be loaded. For example, when we do virtual scrolling, we just add in a certain amount. So these kind of things also allow us. And one of the big things about lazy loading components is that previously, whenever you wanted to add a component, you always had required to add those components into the ng modules and so on. But Angular team is also actually looking into making ng modules optional. But why are they looking into it? It's because of this particular functionality. So in HOC, we are essentially going to pass in a particular component and are going to on runtime compile the component and display it to the user. So to do so, we will be using the component factory resolver. So let me just show you the project that I've used. So this is a project. Okay, so I have used Tailwind CSS to essentially style the components and such. So this particular, beneath is a slideshow. So when I click this, it essentially shows the small set of components that I've created. So all of these are smaller components which are actually getting on time lazy loaded. So they are essentially getting lazy loaded as I click the button. So if you have lightweight components, this is very good. Like if you are maintaining, let's say you have a dashboard sort of component where you are maintaining a lot of smaller components, such as graphs and so on, which are essentially get an API call, get data, render the data. So in those cases, these are perfect. So now I've just got a looping slideshow. So all of this is lazy loaded, and how is it working? So in our main app component, we have got our standard app component. We are essentially passing a component list, and this is our on-call functionality, to loop the components. And when we do so, we are essentially have a component called app HOC component, and which is essentially passing this component path and component location. So why are we passing it? So let's just take the HOC component first. So in HOC component, we take in a component path and a component class name. So why? So essentially what we are doing is whatever path is being passed to us is getting lazy loaded on runtime. So essentially we have us on the on change ng on changes lifecycle load. What we have done is whenever the component path is getting changed, we will just import the required item. So as you can see, we are essentially using the import path and using the await keyword, so we can lazy load it. So when we do so, we get a ES6 module that has been loaded. So from that ES6 module, we need to extract, we need to convert the ES6 module into an Angular component. So we do that using the resolve component factory from the component factory resolver API. So this essentially provides us a resolve component factory. So what is a factory? Factory is essentially what components get compiled into at the end of the day. So once you compile an Angular component, it gets converted into factories. So we are essentially converting this ES6 module into a component, and then we are using the view container. So let me just show you a small snippet of what is going on in the HTML part. So in the HTML template, we are just using the ng template and using a identifier, we are extracting the component. So we are using view container to view container reference to actually essentially extract it. So what we do is we can essentially, this provides us a lot of APIs. So it has insert, clear, and so on. It has essentially got all of the CRUD APIs. So what do they do? So this essentially, so within the container, we essentially call the components as views essentially. So we can essentially clear those components or views using .clear. And then what we can essentially do is we can mount the container. We can mount the component into the container using the create component. So essentially, we can create component using the component factory that we have created. So in this line, we create the component factory, and then we can simply mount this particular component into the container. So what this essentially allows us to do is this. So essentially all of these are smaller components. So let me just show you the component snippets as well. So we have got small component snippets, where I've essentially passing the data. I've got a small data, and I've got the HTML template, which is made wrote in Tailwind CSS. So these are small, and these all of these components support all of the lifecycle hooks. ng on init, ng on changes, after view init. You can do all of those things. So as you can see, these are all components that are getting lazy loaded on runtime. So by using this, we can essentially mount those. And to pass data, we can essentially extract the component instance using the .instance ability, and we can pass in the data. So in this case, as you can see on the top here, so this is essentially a counter that I'm maintaining to show how many times I've clicked. So essentially in every single component, I am essentially maintaining a input event to essentially get the index. So every single one of my components have these. So all of these components here have all of those input ability. And every time what I'm doing is essentially using the .instance to essentially get the component instance and update the instance. So this, whenever I update the instance right here, this also triggers all of the lifecycle changes. So so when you're writing the components, the HOC components, you can essentially write it as a standard Angular component, like you would be writing, ng on init, ng on changes, your standard input output events. And so this essentially allows us to, create a dynamic app which, works with these things. So why would you do this? Like until now, we have been using Angular for so many years, but why would you do this now? So until now, let's take the very good example of handling APIs in a component. Generally what you used to do until the project was that create a service. In that service, you would maintain all of your HTTP services and so on. So instead of doing creating that, we can essentially create a HOC component to handle API calls. So you can essentially, so in this case, we have passed in the component path and component class name. So instead, you could also add in something like at the rate input of a API call. API call, that was in form of a promise or so on. So you can essentially pass it a promise. So what would happen is that whenever you have a promise, so in ng on changes, you can simply just resolve. You can complete the, you can start the promise and resolve the promise and essentially pass the data to your component. So essentially, what you can do is you can essentially offload all of your API logic. You have got the loading components and so on into the HOC component, and you can essentially create standard components, which do not necessarily care. All they care about is getting the data and outputting the and displaying the data, processing the data, and so on into the other components. And one of the best things about using this as a API handler is that it also provides you a lot of abilities such as refresh and bounce back. So for example, let's say due to some server issue, your API failed. So what you can essentially do is within the HOC component, you can create a refresh functionality, which will essentially do the same function that happens in which can essentially call the same promise again. Essentially recall the API, and whatever data you get again from the API, you can again pass it to the component. So you can maintain your child state and also provide updated data to your child at the same time without having to implement individual refresh functionality in each and every component. You can just sort it out into the HOC component and forget about it. And also one more thing it provides us is ability to maintain the state data. So as when we're creating the payment components and such, one of the biggest issue that we had was we were maintaining forms that are 30-40 fields large. It takes a lot of time to fill those. And sometimes what used to happen was that the customer might have set up one of the components wrong. So if they wanted to update it, they either had to sacrifice all of the work they have done on the child components, and they had to go to the parent, or they could essentially open a new tab, update the parent, and then come to the same tab, update the they can essentially refresh the data and they are essentially maintained all of their form data. This essentially revolutionized how we handle the API calls, how we handle these things. And another good thing about this is you can also pass in, in similar way, you can also pass in a fallback component. So let's say your API has failed, you can essentially pass in a fallback component, and if the API fails, instead of mounting the main component you wanted to mount, it would instead mount the fallback component. So it would be something like, sorry, the API due to some reason API has failed, please contact support, and so on. All of those things, you can essentially add it into it. Please try after some time. So you do not have to every single component write down manually all of those things. You do not have to worry about maintain all of the loading logic into your HOC component. So this essentially makes your standard components very easy to write. In our project, we had essentially converted all of our components into a template. Every component always every template always had the same inputs. It took in data, it took out data, and so on. So this essentially because we are just going to reuse the HOC component to provide us all of the functionalities and forget about it. It made the code writing experience much more easier, and it also provided a lot of extra functionality that we never thought we required. But once we added it, it completely changed how our application worked. So this is the HOC. So this is essentially the entire code. If you want to go through, essentially we are using the view child, view container def, and using the resolve component factory resolve, mounting the component. And each time we do run a clear, mainly due to essentially if there is an existing component, we just remove that component and add this component. But at the same time, the content container is actually an array. So you can keep on pushing in components as well. If you want to, like let's say you have got a dashboard and you want the user to customize their UI. So you can essentially maintain it in this in content container. The user can each time add in. So essentially you can just each time keep on dot create component. So it would keep on adding all of those components. If you wanted to create some sort of a customizable UI application, this will also help you a lot in there as well. So this is the Angular HOC. So next, I also wanted to come look into Tailwind. So Tailwind. So if you have recent, Tailwind CSS has been making big news about how good it is, and a majority of us have been very interested with the Tailwind CSS, mainly due to the Perth CSS ability of it. So Perth CSS ability in Tailwind is essentially the functionality which is very similar to the tree shaking, where essentially you are removing. So for example, you are using Bootstrap and so on, material design libraries. They provide you hundreds of CSS, but you might not be using hundreds of CSS in your files. You might be using maybe like 10, 20 CSS classes. Like you might not be using all of them. So why do you need all of them? Why are you shipping it to customer at all of them? So Perth CSS is essentially exactly that. Perth CSS essentially removes all of the extra CSS that we are writing, and only providing only those CSS that we need to the customer. So let me just give you a small demonstration of it. So as you can see, so let me just open my code. So with the Tailwind CSS, integrating it is very simple. You just do the npm install, and then you just run the npx Tailwind CSS in it. So this essentially creates a Tailwind CSS config file. So within the config file, one of the big thing is this, the purge section. So purge, you can customize, what all which classes and which files need to be purged. CSS. So let's just put it false for now, okay? And let's see the compilation. How much time it takes to compile, and what is the size of the compilation files. So in this format, we are not purging the CSS, and it should be around 8 MB or so. So why is it? Why did I combine Tailwind CSS and HOCs and so? One of the biggest things about the HOCs is that it reduces the number of imports, and by reducing the number of imports, what it means is that you are reducing the bundle files. As we compile these files, all of the imports that you write are essentially kind of getting included into the JS file, because at the end of the day, you might be pushing the bundle file might be in around 10 to 5 to 6 files. And all of that code is getting combined. So by combining all of that code, so by essentially removing the number of import, you're essentially removing the amount of code that is getting included into your bundle. So you're just writing the component once, and that's all it is getting added. So as you can see here, the styles.css file is a whopping 6 MB. Like in comparison, our entire project is not even the same size. Our main file, like would be the vendor JSON, because we are not using anything in polyfills or main. As you can see, it's just 2 MB and the CSS alone is 6 MB. So let me just just remove enable the purge ability. And you can also see the amount of time it took, for a small application, which has got about 12 components, it has got 32 seconds compilation speed, 32 seconds. And with the purge CSS, it should be around in the 20 seconds. So with the Tailwind CSS and HOC, we are essentially reducing our app size by a lot, by not, including the same component 20 times into the files and so on. We are going to be reducing these things by a lot. And on top of that, if ng modules does become optional, which Angular team is making, this would essentially developer experience. Why does it streamline? One of the biggest thing about Angular was that a lot of people used to get scared. What is modules? What is ng modules? What is @component? Why is it a component? Does component get added into module? Or does module get added into component? All of those things, kind of created a confusion around Angular, which made it, oh, it's a very dangerous framework to use. It's very complex. So this, so with the ng models becoming optional and Ivy, they have kind of optimized these things. So as you can see, here it only took us 22 seconds to compile. So 32 seconds. So if you are running in a CI/CD environment, these kind of things, in a very small component alone, we have already saved 10 seconds. Once the component gets larger and larger, these times will, these benefits will also increase. So in CI/CD, where you're paying by the amount of time you are using the server, just by this, you have essentially saved 10 seconds already. And on top of that, you can see here, the styles.css is only a 15.28 KB in comparison to the 6 MB that we were previously sending. In fact, our total here, as you can see, is 8.51 MB to just 2.5 MB. So as you can see, as the components, as I said, it's around 12 components, and we are already seeing this much difference. And on top of that, I have done a small mistake, because I added routing into the system, whereas I did not need. If I were to remove the routing, I might have actually, dropped under 2, in fact. So as you can see, by reducing these things, this makes Angular really small. So, previously one of the biggest arguments, Angular versus React versus Vue was that Angular is a framework, it becomes a very heavy application. As you can see, if you are playing your cards right and using it correctly, you can be seeing a very small bundle size, which is almost competing to other frameworks. Whereas, with React, you would be adding with React all of its other libraries, all of its state management, and so on. So they might actually, you're actually looking at almost same size of application sizes. This is very competitive. Like, if you're actually using the application, and as you can see, with the component experience as well, with even that, we are using lazy loaded and so on. As you can see, it's almost instantaneous. Like, you can also add in animations and so on, to make it much more smoother. But as I said, I'm just showing the features that how good it can work, if you try to make it good. So what else is there in Angular? So one of the another things, why this kind of interested me is that Angular, from the very base itself, from the Angular team, from the very base, they want to actually convert into a pure micro front-end architecture, to essentially allow us to, hot swap modules on production and so on. Since, these are becoming more and more common. Like if you're working with backend, this has become extremely common, where you're hot swapping APIs, hot swapping API code and so on. So with the pure introduction of micro front-end architecture, because now we no longer we are essentially lazy loading modules and every components and everything. So this can essentially lead a path to a pure micro front-end architecture where we are completely we are able to deploy individual build files at a time, which will essentially just update the build files, and that will automatically provide us micro front-end architecture and make it really good. And also they have also done huge changes in the end-to-end testing and trying to make it even more easier to write with so on. So this is why like if you're writing Angular, do actually think about like do not think of Angular as just as this huge framework with a heavy architecture and so on. It's actually much more easier than you think. And writing quality code and writing efficient and performant code is actually very much easier in Angular. And you shouldn't just put it off as as a heavy framework. So Digvijay. Yeah.
Hi again,
Hi.
Abhinav.
So
thank you so much for that talk.
So
yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, I was just looking into the questions, that the people are putting up. So that's it.
Yes, we are going to get to that. So we do have some questions that require your assistance. So first off, I think Anubhav wants to ask, if we don't clear the component using .clear function, will the components get appended one after the other?
Yeah, so essentially the view container is an array. Like, it's similar to, how you write in HTML, you'll be just, keeping on adding elements. So it's essentially an array. So if you do not remove the dot clear, what it would do is, keep on adding views one by one by one. So that's what I was mentioning by, creating customizable UI. So, every single customer can essentially create their own UIs using the dot. So, by using this, so essentially, the customer can have a modal, and they can select, I want in my dashboard, I want this graph, I want this graph, and you can essentially select it, and under the hood you can essentially be using the view container ref and create component, and just essentially maintain using dot clear as is. So there is also dot delete, to delete a specific component and so on. So all of those features are there. Do refer to the APIs before actually using it to get a better view about it.
Well, a follow-up question to that was that maybe you can use the output function, and if you could please tell him how to do that, or any references that he can learn from.
So essentially, at the rate output, you would be using event emitter. So essentially, when you are doing at the rate output, so let me just share my screen for a second. There is one thing that I would like to show before. So when you are doing something like this, one of the only current, so there are essentially two ways to implement HOCs. So one is using ng component def, that is essentially, a bit of a boilerplate level code where essentially you're essentially writing the code to how Angular should convert a component into factory. But we are not using that, we are using the API for it, which is much more readable. Like if I were to show you the ng component render, nobody would understand what is going on. So, but one of the disadvantages of this, however, is that when we are using dot instance, because we are using TypeScript and such, this would essentially give you a type error. If I were to remove this would immediately give you a type error. So essentially, we are maintaining a dynamic wrapper component right here, which is essentially providing us @ inputs and all of the inputs that would be providing to the pair child component. So similarly, if you want to also map at the @ outputs, you would also have to do something like you would add @ outputs right here. So @ outputs, event emitter, and so on, and have the event emitter emit from your child component, then have it handled in your dynamic wrapper component, and then put it out to from the HOC to outwards. So it's a bit of a one-time task that you would need to do, but it's only a one-time task. Once you do it, forget about it.
All right. Well, I hope that answers your question, Anubhav. Also, Joseph Raj has one question, but I think the community has already come to his rescue, but we'll still address it nonetheless. So he says, I guess the HOC component we could use for the global common model dialog and insert the components into it.
Yeah,
that's something that we can
obviously do. It's essentially any component. Like we are just using like right now, you essentially use it to create a slideshow. You can use anything for it. Like there is no restrictions whatsoever. As I said, it's essentially how you write Angular. One of the biggest difference between the ng component def method and the component factory resolver method is that ng component def is a bit more boilerplate level code. It's in fact much better actually. Like it's better. But if you're writing a code, one of the biggest things about writing a code is that it needs to be understandable. It needs to be manageable. Like one of the biggest things that I've learned is that you can write some crazy code and it would absolutely work. It would never be, there never will be any issue. But once you think about think of maintaining it for 6 months, maintaining let's you have got a new teammate coming in and so on, they will get confused if you write that sort of code. So it's not necessary. At that point, either you would want the person to be extremely skilled at Angular to the point, but that is not something you can expect. And in my opinion, if you're managing code, it should always be easier to understand. That's the first thing you should be doing. So that's why you would be using the component def. And the best thing about component def is that you are writing the components as an Angular component. You're not writing it as a special component of giving some higher level thought. No, you write it as an Angular component. It follows all of the Angular rules that you're writing. So you can essentially create the HOC once, forget about it, and write all of the components underneath, and it will absolutely work fine. So you are creating a modal dialog. Good. You just write the modal dialog, write the CSS. It opens a pop-up. That's it. And then within it, just pass in the component that you want to do.
Well, I guess that answers your question, Joseph, in quite some detail. And finally, we have time for one more question, Abhinav. So Ashik asks, can we use Tailwind with Sass?
It's Tailwind. So like if you are working with Tailwind CSS, it follows all of the rules that Tailwind follows. So if it was like, I'm not experimented it with Sass and so on. I have currently done this one with CSS. But if it works, if Tailwind follows with it, you can use it. Like there is no restriction about that. Like it's essentially dependent upon the Tailwind library itself rather than Angular or such. And
Right.
obviously at the end of the day, you can customize it. Right? You can change. If you want to use a different, add in your different posts. You want to add something else. Like there is no restriction about it. Like at the end of the day, Angular is JS. So if it works in JS, it should work in Angular. Probably you would maxima have at the rate types and so on, for the types, but that's it.
Right. Well, I hope that answers your question, Ashik. And that's all the time we have for the questions, Abhinav. So once again, thank you so much for delivering such an insightful talk. And of course, I would love to see you again towards the end of the event. So stay around and I'll see you again soon.
Yeah.
Brilliant. See you.